morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am thrilled to be having this conversation today, and we're going to have a conversation on burnout. But it's much bigger than that. And before we get going, I want to introduce my guests. But before we do that, we had a conversation before we started here, and Cindy, who you'll get to know, asked me, why are you doing this? Why do you care about this, and why do you care about sharing with your listeners and your network? And here's the deal. I would love in my heart for our listeners to have an aha moment about where they are on the burnout curve. I would love for them to be inspired to say, what do I need to do for me? And I would love them to be motivated to make that a hard action. You all know at the McGuckin Group that we get really practical, and it's all very well to talk about esoteric, and we're going to talk about the heart today a lot, and yet we're going to land this because we're going to say, and so what? So thank you for joining us. It's going to be a great conversation, and I'd love to kick off with Carrie to do an introduction, and not only are Carrie and I incredible work colleagues, but she's a dear friend of mine. So, Carrie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Audrey. My name is Carrie Bond, a former CHRO and also a longtime executive coach. And one of the reasons I love to do coaching is I get great satisfaction from helping people find their next step, whether it's through a conversation, a question, a storytelling, just some way of revealing what the issue is and what to do about it. I just love helping people move forward. And I hope through this podcast, there is an idea or two that helps you do that as well, whatever you might be facing.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you taking time out, right, just to share your perspective. Cindy, I'd love to call you a dear friend as well, because we spent such deep time together in the work that we did. But please tell our audience who you are.
So my name is Cindy Murray, and my background is I have my master's in social work from Western Michigan University, and I am currently a Hoffman teacher with the Hoffman Institute. And I also teach undergraduate and graduate courses in the social work department at Western Michigan University.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. So just know that we're surrounded by just incredible perspective. And as Cindy said, she's a Hoffman teacher. And, a lot of you know that, part of my journey through this journey of burnout, I tried a lot of things. I tried self-help. I tried the exercise. I tried the massage. I tried getting the nail. None of that works. I can tell you none of that works. Does work is the courage to go deep and the courage to surrender yourself to what might be possible. Now, not everybody can experience Hoffman, but what we'd like to do is just explore our points of view around burnout. Carrie, let me start off with you. I mean, why did you say yes to invest in time in this, and what do you care about?
There have been periods in my life where I know, looking back, I was at a point of pretty deep burnout. And I didn't maybe know who I could reach out to help me move through that process. And so when you asked me to do this, it's like, again, if there's one idea that comes out of this for someone who's listening and watching this, I hope that we can help one person, 10 people, 50 people kind of move forward. So, I think it's just lending kind of, putting that hand out and seeing if it can help somebody. So I was happy to say yes. And of course, happy to talk with you, and great to also talk with Cindy.
Yeah, Cindy, I'd love just, we were sharing some stories before we hopped on here, and I'd love to hear part of your story and your journey and how you got to be at Hoffman.
Absolutely. And it ties in with the question that you just put out to Carrie about why I was interested and said yes when you asked me, Audrey. And if I think back to my own journey in life and my own burnout, When I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, I was all about being successful. Came from Midwestern blue collar family who had never been to college. And I was going to break that. And so went to college, got my master's degree, was at the top of my game. I had accomplished everything I had in life. And I was in my mid 30s and I was still suffering. I was suffering in my job. And if I look at the overview of burnout, I was to the point I was dreading going into work. I was to the point where relationships were failing. I was to the point where we all talk about self-help and take care of yourself, but do any of us really know how to do it? It's similar to what you
Yeah.
said, Audrey. The massages weren't working anymore. And that was the same with me. Vacation wasn't working anymore. I'd go to a beautiful place for a week. There, I should be better. And I would come right back into work dreading it, irritable. And so it got to the point where I knew I needed to do something different, but we get stuck in those trappings often with benefits and money and prestige and status within our positions. And even though we're where we want to be, there's something that's still missing deeper within us, something we still can't quite connect to. And so I had something happen. Kind of the joke or the proverbial saying is, if you can either do it willingly or life will happen that will make it happen to you. And that's what happened to me. I was in a serious auto accident. And in my recovery of about 5 years, I went into the Hoffman process. And what I learned through that was that I was wonderful intellectually, just grooving through life, top of my game, accomplished what I had wanted to do. But there was this deeper yearning to rest and to listen to myself and to take those breaks and truly appreciate those breaks and that self-care. And what I had to do was learn what was the driver of the continuous cycle of staying in burnout. Intellectually, I knew I was burned out, but I didn't know what to do about it. And so what happened was I was able to get in touch with those other aspects of myself, which was connection to my emotional self, connection to my body, to stop pushing my body, to really listen to what it needed and to surrender to that. And then to really listen to that spiritual self within me. And that for some people might be religion, for some people that might be nature, for some people that might be quiet, just being quiet for periods of time. And so when I was able to connect truly into those as allies, those parts of myself, that intellectual burnout has lessened so much. Because we're still going to have burnout. It's impossible to not. There are deadlines we have to meet. There are bills we have to pay. My whole hope in my own journey was how to still stay on, how to keep doing those things I love to do, but be really aware of the burnout and how to take truly active, long-lasting steps to soften the effects of burnout.
Mm. Thank you,
And
Cindy.
that's what Hoffman helped me do. But I also continue those practices and tools that I learned, which is what led me also to then want to teach this to other people. And I feel so privileged to walk alongside people on their path who are
Yeah,
discovering those aspects of themselves.
I love that, Cindy. And of course you have a technical background, right? And you also worked in therapy. I suppose there might be people listening to this conversation that says, well, first of all, I'm not sure what Hoffman is, but maybe I can't afford Hoffman, or maybe I just don't have the time because of my family's circumstances. What are the things you might offer, Cindy, as there's never easy first steps. But what might be some steps that our listeners could take on that journey to recovery, and our listeners could take on that journey to self-care?
It's a great question, Audrey. I really appreciate that. Because if people do look up Hoffman, they'll find it's fairly pricey to take it. So just I want to put that out to make sure to know that there are scholarships available. People who have taken this, there's a generous scholarships available, and also the timing. It's a week commitment of your life, and like you said, Audrey, some people can't take that time away. So even a small toe dipping into that would be, there is a 2-day online program that it's called the Hoffman Essentials, that is also offered through the Hoffman Institute, but away from Hoffman, because it's not just about promoting that. That really isn't my whole focus here and intention. But to come back to what you said, I think about when I was a young person, I was working in a large medical facility, and we had a few employees that were very, very high strung and create a lot of stress for everybody. And this is what I would say to people is, I remember I would take just a moment and I would disappear. Usually it was a bathroom, because that's sometimes the only place that you can get a few moments of quiet. I would find a single bathroom and I would literally walk in and close the door and turn off the light. And I would just put my hands on my heart and breathe for a moment, 30 seconds to just breathe. And in that place, just say, okay, Cindy, you're okay. This isn't about you right now. This is what they need to do and how they need to be. How do I come back to who I know I am and the essence of what I want to be, rather than being consistently triggered by other people? Because we are going to get triggered by people. There's no way we aren't going to get triggered by people. And often it's something similar to what our parents did. And so we're like this little kid in that moment. And this in particular, there was a physician who yelled at staff all the time. Well, the moment he did that, boom, I was right back into triggered and shaking, and like I was this little kid being talked at. And so burnout, in my opinion, can come from those stressors. Yes, we have workload. So how does that impact you? Yes, we have people that we just don't get along with. And part of that is because if you think about it, our work family is like our family growing up. And so we are going to get triggered in the same way. Work life is typically your dysfunctional family. Yeah, and I say that lovingly and affectionately, because there's just no way you can get away from that, because we all have our own ways of being. And so how do you consistently take that reflection off, oh, this is about somebody else and what they're doing, come back into who you know that you are? And also in that place, what is the drive? What is the drive that you have that feels like being that is your definition of success? And what I might offer your listeners also is, maybe take some time to sit down and what is success in your life? Is it working 80 hours a week? Is it getting to the next tier in the organization? Is it, or as you get older and as you mature and as you become more aware of yourself, is your definition of I am successful the same as it was a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Can you continue to redefine that? And if self-care and burnout are two huge factors, what do you need to do to shift? And often people think it's huge. I need to quit my job, sell everything, and move to Portugal and be in a van, roaming around for a year. It doesn't need to be that big. It can be as simple as, whoa, I'm really struggling right now at work. I don't want to be there. I have a negative attitude. I don't feel hope anymore. I'm going to take a day and really commit to self-care for a day. Often we go, okay, I'm going to go to, this beautiful beach in the tropics for a week, and then I'm going to come back. Well, you come back into the same thing, right? Really, nothing's changed. You just change locations in your misery. a more beautiful location in your misery. But what I would say too, just to wrap this up, Audrey, is really coming back to what is success for me? And how do I have a vision of what that means? And that's just not about your job. It's also about how you're going to tend to your emotional self, your family life, because that's affected in burnout, and your spiritual life and your body, whatever that is defined for you.
It really is.
I think that's so important. So many things about what you just said, Cindy, are really important. And I think that part about revisiting what success is and what's most important in where you are in your life stage, both personally and professionally. And I think, we get into habits, right, that have worked for us in the earlier parts of our career and maybe early relationships and stuff, and we stick to what's familiar. And we get to a point where we realize, that worked for me for a really long time, but it just isn't working anymore. And I think starting with what does success look like at this point in my life? Maybe now I have young children, and I don't want to be remembered as the mom who was always at work and never had time for me and didn't really provide the support that maybe I needed as I was growing up. So you want to find that fulfillment in the important parts of your life. And I think whether it's annually or every couple of years, things change in our life, right? And not only are we changing, but those around us are changing. So it also is thinking about what's important for them. Again, whether that's at work or at home or in other important parts of our lives. So taking the time and carving it out. If you can do that on a beach in Tahiti, great. But I think your point is well taken. Just going somewhere where there might be more beautiful scenery or more sunshine than where you are, doing that alone isn't going to probably solve it or give you a path forward. But if you use that wonderful scenery to connect with yourself and what is really going on for yourself and take advantage of those kinds of moments, a vacation can be great. But I think, like you said, just assuming that this different place is going to be what rejuvenates me, it may not be. And what an expensive way to not make some progress if you're trying to do that.
Yeah, I love that, Carrie. And what I'm hearing is broadly, burnout is something that we're seeing across industries, across genders, across locations, and it's not exclusive to one group. And what I'll tell you is that we are seeing a huge uptick in burnout in all of the clients that we work with. And just because, what I tend to say in a lot of the work I do is let's look at the macro factors. We have a war in the Ukraine that's still going on. We have clients that are in the Ukraine, and when they get up in the morning, they have to be able to listen to the radio to see where the bombing is. We have clients that are in California, and they're having to be concerned about the California fires. We have in Florida, we have lots of weather issues here as well. We have mass school shootings in the U.S. There's a lot going on in the big macro environment. And then you take that inside of organizations, and then there's a lot going on there. So when you put all of that together, it really becomes a shitstorm, for want of a better word. But I think what I heard you offering, Cindy and Carrie, was two parallel paths that you might take. The first path is if you find yourself just in a moment where you're overwhelmed, and this happened to my daughter Emily 2 days ago. She said, I feel like I'm ready to take a panic attack, and I'm really anxious. And I said, okay, let's lay on the floor, let's start breathing, and talked her through it. And that's one of the things Cindy said: go to a bathroom stall, or just find a moment where you can go away and just start practicing breathing. And if you've not done that before, I encourage you to really think about, just go on YouTube and start, researching breathing techniques. I promise it will help you. It helps you physically. And then I heard this other parallel path that's practical as well, that says there's a reason that you're perhaps having a panic attack, or that you're triggered, or you're stressed out. And what might that be? And how can you take time to think about that? I always really encourage people to say, find a quiet place. That might be in your car, in a parking lot. I've done that before. It might be in a car in a parking lot. And that's okay. But take a piece of paper with you and take a pen and start writing things down. And be honest with yourself. Just try and be honest with yourself, because if you can't be honest with yourself, nobody else can. But let me see what that strikes. Cindy, I'll pull you back in and say, did I summarize that right?
Yeah, yeah. And the only thing I would add to that, as you were talking, Audrey, was I have several students that I do coaching with after they've taken a process, because I teach the majority of the processes in Canada, but I also teach in California and Connecticut, all 3 sites for the Hoffman Institute. But I have a lot of students that are from Toronto, and oftentimes just that being in the environment of a big city, and then they come to Hoffman and they spend a week outside at beautiful retreat sites in nature. And what the other thing that I find that people have done is they really incorporate, even if you're in a big city, that's wonderful if you live in a big city or a neighborhood, but where can you find those little pockets of, just like you said, Audrey, you can go down in your car for a moment and listen to some music. Okay, take your 5-minute, 10-minute break there. Or in Toronto, lots of parks. People have actually said, I actually go on my lunch hour now. I used to eat it at my desk. Now I go to the nearby park that's 2 blocks away, and I sit and I have my lunch. And just that shifts the environment, the work environment, and that burnout, because it's a high stress, you're working. So to get out and just have a connection in some different way to nature, or whatever it is that supports you internally in those moments. So that's the other thing I was thinking about in that moment.
Love that. Carrie, let me see what's striking you in this moment.
One of the things I was thinking about when Cindy was talking earlier about, again, kind of the habits we get into, and she was talking about you get sort of caught up in the traps of success, whether that's financial status, etc. And a lot of the clients that I work with, the shoulds speak very strongly to them. Well, I should do this, I should do that. And it's trying to, in our conversations, trying to isolate the shoulds that are being imposed on us that we have believed for, a chunk of our life, to what is it that is most important for us at this point in our life, and making that switch from the shoulds to I want to. This is important to me, and this is what I'm committed to doing. And so I think being able to distinguish that and really make a path forward. And I think that's so much of what Cindy and you are talking about.
Yeah. Cindy, I see you writing something down, which means
Yeah. Can I tag on to Carrie's? I love that. You know what I just wrote down, thank you, is and in this place, can one step back and say, what will be supportive to me?
Yes.
Not the shoulds, but is this supportive to me? And am I in a conflict with what I should do versus this is what will be supportive to me? And then in that moment, making that best choice for you, because often it's going to be what's supportive. Otherwise, you just keep doing the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I love
Right.
it. What would feel supportive to me and what I need to do in my life? That might be, and this is another common comment, is when I go home at night, I'm still on my phone all night long. And in fact, I've heard lots of students at Hoffman say, my kids complain, Mom, Dad, you're on the phone all night long. And it could be something as what will be supportive to my well-being, and trying to disconnect from the burnout. That might be, tonight I'm going to commit to an hour. I'm not going to answer any work calls. I'm not going to look at my work emails. I'm going to take 1 hour and truly be with my family. I'm going to take 1 hour and be with my loved one this evening. I'm going to take 1 hour tonight and walk the dog without my phone or something. I'm just throwing some things out, because again, it doesn't have to be a beach in Tahiti for a week. 30 minutes, 10 minutes each night, that you're disconnecting from what it is that's burning you out in your work environment to what's supportive for your well-being in your life. And really
I love that way of thinking about it. You hear a lot of, oh, I need to set better boundaries and communicate those boundaries to people around us. But it is that. So what would be supportive to me? And I'm thinking of one of the clients that I've worked with. She has 2 young children. And she said, I realize that when I'm done with work, if I spend 30 minutes playing with them, interacting with them, like the rest of the night just goes so much better. And if for whatever reason I don't do that, the night's a misery for everybody. And so again, figuring out what would be supportive of me and those that I care most about at this time, and then how can I make a commitment to that as a new habit, and being able to do it. So I think you're spot on.
Yeah. And if I can just add one thing onto that too, thanks, Carrie, if it's all right, Audrey. I'd done a workshop many years ago. It was a retreat, and the facilitator made a great comment, and I've never forgotten it. And what he said is, it was a vision quest retreat. And he said, people come on their vision quest and then they go home and they say, I'm going to meditate every day for an hour. I'm going to walk the dog. Yeah, he said, and then they go back and they fall right back into the same thing, into the same routine. So what his suggestion was, and I think it's really helpful, is he said, commit to a one-time action. So when you go back home, just something that is attainable, to do something attainable. So make a one-time action, like, okay, in the next week, or when I get home, I'm going to spend 1 hour playing with my kids, or we're going to go to the laser tag this weekend, or whatever it might be, right? A one-time commitment. He said, and then a short-term commitment. So that might be, okay, every day for 5 days, I'm just going to put my hands on my heart and take a breath and pause. Short term, attainable. And he said, and then a long-term commitment. Okay, I commit to not scrolling on my phone one night a week or something like that. But he said something that's reasonable, because he said, what I find is often people want to just, you want to throw everything away. And like I said, move to Portugal. And but that's really not feasible. And in a way, sometimes you set yourself up for failure. So what are the ways also, because it's easy to say, I'm going to commit to this, but then it's a pretty broad, loose commitment. So that's where I loved his comments about make a one-time commitment, something you can do and that's attainable. And do a short-term commitment that's obtainable and doing. Because the more you practice this, and we have a saying at the Hoffman process, that practice creates permanence. And that what you're doing is you're literally creating the new neural pathways by doing new behaviors. So the more that you practice it in little bitty chunks, a little bit, 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 and then that adds on and creates permanence and literally changes the neural pathways. And so that commitment is more obtainable by not doing it all in just one quick chunk. For some people that works. I don't want to say it doesn't. For some people, they just say, wow, I know I need to make a huge shift. And that's what I need to do. And they do that. But many times what I find is people say, I've got to do it in little bits. And I think that helps within burnout too. When you think about, I like my job, I want to be where I'm at, I want to continue there. How do I navigate the burnout? And that might be just taking little, like doing things in hors d'oeuvre size versus whole meals.
I love that. Some things down as well. Carrie, did you want to hop in?
Yeah, I just wanted to build onto that, kind of linking a couple of these things together. Earlier, Cindy, you said about, what would be supportive for me right now. And I think making sure that you're smart and intentional about choosing whatever, one-time thing you want to do, or something that can be a little bit longer term. Because if it's the right thing for you, that which is supportive is going to be easier for you to make permanent in that habit. I was talking with someone few months ago about kind of the idea of the morning rituals. Like, what are the little things that help you have your best day? And I told her what I do, and she kind of laughed. She goes, "Oh my God, that sounds like so much work." Well, because it wasn't the right set of rituals for her. But I just said, figure out a couple of things that help you get off to a great day. And you might borrow something that I said, or you might have something completely unique, but it needs to be you. Otherwise, that feels like work as well. And that's not the idea. It's to find a ritual that is supportive and really helps you connect to yourself. And again, have a great day, a great week, a great month.
I love that. We are going to round up this conversation. I want to show so much gratitude to Carrie, you for saying yes, and Cindy, so much gratitude for us meeting and you being part of my journey after Hoffman. And thank you both for sharing your perspectives. And my greatest hope is that something has clicked for at least one or two people that's listening to this, and that makes a difference. So thank you both.